Dream Car Exchange here. I'm Chris.
And this is Sean.
We're here for our next installment of our Would You Rather video series. We're excited to bring it to you. Today we're going to be doing a matchup of high-performance sports sedans. So we've gone German versus German, Italian versus Italian. Now we're going to put Italians against the Germans here. So today we're doing a 2007 Maserati Quattroporte against a 2011 Porsche Panamera 4.
Yeah, and the best part of this, I think, is that these are really attainable cars, right? They're attainable dream cars because these are both worth less than 20 grand. So I think that makes it equally more kind of interesting, so that it's not just, oh, it's a $60,000 car, it's a $100,000 car. These are less than $20,000 cars, less than a new Kia.
Yeah, and it's interesting because everybody plays in this space as well too. So it's a really cool matchup.
Yep.
These could be daily drivers. You really get the best of all worlds of these types of cars.
Great.
So if you like the videos, please subscribe. We'd love to bring more to you in the future. And we're going to talk about the exteriors, jump inside, look at the interiors, and then we're also going to take them for the all-important test drive.
Yeah. Then we'll wrap it up, and we'll have the ultimate question of, would you rather?
All right, so let's take a look at the exterior of the Maserati. We've got a beautiful day here in the Northeast. We haven't had a lot of them recently. As you notice, we're going to be practicing our social distancing still here. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take the test drives together. But let's look at the exterior here. I mean, beautiful day, and I mean, absolutely beautiful car. These cars, I mean, the shape, the curves, I mean, everything about these cars really blends in and comes together. Couple things, you know, pretty. I mean, I love the wheels. Even it's a 9-spoke wheel, uniform size spokes, but it just matches the car very well. I know we're probably getting a little bit of sun glare here, and it probably doesn't do the justice for this color.
Yeah. Like
this color, Argento Luna, it's really a silverish blue color. When the sun's right on it, it's much more silver, but the blue, the color of this car is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
I love it.
I really like it because what I also like about it too, it's not black, it's not gray, it's not pure silver, which a lot of these cars ain't.
Yeah.
So it really does stand out.
I'm a fan of the 3 vents.
I like them on this car.
Yeah.
I think it's become very cliche now. I think a lot of designers, between that and the kind of little scoop vents and things like that, this to me looks relatively authentic.
Yeah.
On some of the others, not so much.
I mean, when you bring it back a little bit and look at the silhouette, I mean, the whole shape of the car from front to rear is just so smooth.
That rear quarter panel, that crease right there, that goes across, really, and again, that whole crease, that line starts all the way over here.
You know, if you bring it back to that little panel here, right with the exhaust, I mean, that's just it. It reminds me exactly of when we're talking about the Ferrari 360. You got the dual tips on each side. Just it looks awesome. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's blending every bit of luxury sports, high performance, all into one look, and it works so well.
All right, so let's talk about the Panamera here, right? So this was introduced in 2010, originally in the S, which was the 8-cylinder and the turbo. And in 2011, they brought in the base model, right? So the base, which is a 6-cylinder, and this one is a base 4, which is all-wheel drive. So if you look at it, it looks like a Porsche, right? The front end, in particular, looks like it came off of a Boxster, a 911, now a Macan, whatever. It totally looks like a Porsche. I mean, between the headlights, the hood, the way it's shaped, the front fenders, it looks like a Porsche. Now, if we look at the profile, okay, some may say it is almost the 928 4-door that never happened. It kind of does have that look to it, right? So the 928 was the front-engine V8 car that Porsche had from 76, 77, all the way up to 95, and it really didn't change that much during that period. And they would always kind of tease a 4-door version of it, but it never happened. So this kind of looks like that, especially when we look at it from a silhouette perspective. Now, here's probably the least flattering part of the car, which is the rear three-quarter view in particular.
I would agree. I mean, for me personally, a lot of times, you know, go from generation to generation, it takes me a bit to kind of latch on to the new generation. I wasn't a huge fan of these when they first came out. And that was just kind of knee-jerk reaction, and they've certainly grown on me. And I think it's really how they've softened up, how they've made it a little more aggressive.
All right. Yeah, Chris, I agree. And to me, the biggest thing about this car from an exterior perspective is it looks quintessential Porsche. It is unmistakably a Porsche.
No doubt. All right, so let's take a look at the interior of the Maserati. Cream interior. I've always been a fan of really light interiors. I think this is showing me a little bit that maybe that black convertible with white interior might not be the best thing. It doesn't, you know, it kind of picks up a little more than I thought it would, the real light cream. But, you know, in the bolsters, you see a little more there. Offset.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind that this car is pretty low mileage. I think it has 26,000
exactly.
miles.
And that's where I'm saying, like, if it was a really high mileage, you might say, well, that's really the mileage, but it's the low mileage. So it just shows a little more than you would think for the low mileage.
Thank goodness for the dark carpets.
Yeah. So you got blue, which looks great. Blue on the steering wheel, the carpets. Got a little bit on the door panel here. I love. I mean, the stitching. So that's in the blue as well. Piping along here. I mean, I just love the way they bring it all together. I love even on the door panel here the way they have the stitching through there with the four kind of panels going down. Yeah. Pretty neat look altogether. You know, a lot of different materials in here. Alcantara, even on the pillars, the headliner. Really comfortable seats. I think they've done a really nice job of kind of bringing that feel together for a real high-end performance sedan. Comfortable back here as well too. Mentioned the windows. Even when you're back here, I mean, you don't feel real cramped in the rear seats at all. For me, I'd probably fit a lot better in some of these cars, but the visual out the side windows is really nice.
Yeah, yeah, and my daughter has, who's 9, she's driven in this quite a bit, and this is one of her favorite cars because it has adjustable seats that kind of recline a little bit back and forth a little bit, so she thinks it's a lot of fun. So, but yeah, I agree. It's fairly roomy. You can get the 5th person in there in a pinch. You know, and it's just got a really good look to it.
We'll just take a quick look at the trunk. Probably where you see a lot of divergence in the sports sedan. Some have a lot more room. I think when Sean mentioned the back fender, and then these seats that you have in the back, you're a little limited here. I think I'd have to take my clubs out of the bag to put them in here, but I think we'll see a little difference when we go over to the Panamera as well too.
Just the look, feel, kind of overall workmanship and quality to me is kind of head and shoulders above the Quattroporte. Each cluster, very 911-esque. This center console, actually, you see this now in all of the later model Porsches. It started here in the Panamera in 2010. The other thing is, especially when you start looking and comparing it to the Quattroporte, just the build quality and materials is like head and shoulders above the other. Now, this car does not have full leather.
You wouldn't be able to tell.
Absolutely.
You'd actually think it might be the opposite.
That's a great point.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned the center stack comparison. I mean, one thing, just the shape of this, everything about this is just a much kind of cleaner. It just flows better with the car as well too. Where in the Maserati, it's kind of just this big, bulky square or rectangle box.
Yeah, it looks so much more dated than this car.
It does.
All right, so backseat room, headroom plenty. Again, as Chris mentioned earlier, it's really a true 2 seats back here. You can't fit a third with this kind of center console here. But lots of room. Again, just kind of sitting behind myself, right? So I didn't change the seat at all. Fair amount of leg room. Headroom, again, plenty. And I don't know, this is kind of an interesting story, but when this was originally being designed, the Porsche CEO basically had the criteria that he needed to fit the back seat comfortably. And I think it might have been even with a hat on. And I think he was 6'1" or 6'2", and mission accomplished because I remember the first time I sat in the back of one of these was when they first came out, I went to Ray Cattina in Edison, Porsche, and sat in the back seat, and I said, well, it worked.
Yeah, and you can see, I mean, they even cut it out
Yep.
here to give you that extra room
Yep.
for you tall guys.
Yeah. So lots of room. Doesn't have the Alcantara headliner. That might be an option, or maybe come standard in the turbos. But you know, overall, again, you know, it's got a good look to it. Fairly spacious, though you just reduced to 2 people.
Not a ton of room, right? So it's pretty deep this way.
Yeah.
But the depth overall, really not that much. So you know, probably not the size of a 7 Series or an A8 or anything like that. But it is a hatchback, so you do have the option of, if you don't have people in the back seat,
Yeah.
fold down the seats, and you got a ton of room.
Yeah. I mean, comparing the two, I mean, I was talking about putting golf clubs in, and certainly a lot more room in here to fit
Yeah,
the
that
clubs.
one's definitely tight.
It
This you
is.
can probably make that happen. Again, with the hatch, with the seats down, ton of room.
All right, so we test drive the Maserati. It's comfortable for sure. Steering wheel, comfortable position, altogether a really smooth feel to it so far. So this model is one of the later 07s, so it's got the ZF transmission. I know the dual select really got a lot of bad press for a long time, so this was a big improvement to the drivability of these cars. One thing that's pretty neat with this car, though, and we're talking 4.2 liter V8 Ferrari sourced engine here. As we get up here into the back roads here a little bit, we'll get that exhaust note going. It's truly amazing. It's a sound of beauty, that's for sure. So these cars came in at just under 4,400 pounds, so fairly heavy, but so far, I mean, it feels pretty nimble. It feels pretty light for its weight. It's got a supple feel to it altogether. It's not really that stiff. All right, wow, that sounds awesome. Transmission doesn't, you know, as much as this is the better of the two transmissions, it still feels a little clunky. You know, I expected a little smoother. The car feels like it's, you know, so far it feels like it's always on the verge of wanting to shift, even though you might not be really there yet. That exhaust note's a thing of beauty, though. How could you think you could get into basically a light Ferrari sedan with this Ferrari motor for the price we're talking about, sub $20,000. For how heavy it is, and kind of taking some of these turns here, these curves, you know, pretty limited body roll. Again, the car does feel lighter than its actual weight. It's not super stiff, super rigid. Fairly quiet when you're just below 2,500 RPMs here, and you know, you can barely hear that rumble. But you know, as soon as you really get on it, the thing starts to roar. So I'm going to switch between the. So this has the adaptive suspension. I think it's the Skyhook adaptive suspension. So there's a normal mode and a sport mode. We're in sport now. I'm going to turn the sport off. Oh wow, that's instant. Feel that in the. Felt it right in the accelerator. I think we'll switch it back to sport. Let's listen to this. Wow, that is a thing of beauty. That's going to be hard to compete with. That exhaust note, that is just fantastic. Nice shifting there. I felt a little clunky when we first got out. I know we were probably at a lot less RPMs with those shifts early on, but transmission feels a little better now out on the highway. So in summary, you know, the car's got ample power, very responsive, precise steering, limited body roll, overall transmission, you know, at times felt pretty smooth. I think everything just doesn't come together as tight as you really would expect it to for a car that, you know, original sticker price of somewhere between $110,000 and $20,000.
All right. So here we are in the Quattroporte. So initial impressions, it feels floaty to me. It doesn't feel very buttoned down. Steering relatively light, pretty light. Sounds good, even just cruising. Dipping into the throttle just a little bit. Sounds good. Around the turn, again, fairly smooth, though pretty light steering. Accelerates pretty good. So this car, 400 horsepower, around 333 foot-pounds of torque. Red line is around 7,500. So this is the 4.2 liter derived. Basically, it's a Ferrari engine, and it sounds like it. You know, certainly need to get in the upper RPMs. You know, even now, it's just kind of we're cruising at a little over 2,000 RPMs. But brake feels pretty good. Transmission downshift a little rough. Sounds real good. So again, just a bit. Again, best way to describe it, I think, is just a bit floaty. Seating position. I have it all the way down, but it feels like I'm sitting on it, right? On the seat, rather than kind of sitting in the seat. So not real tight on the bolsters. You know, definitely more of a slant to the luxury side of the car than the sports side. Fairly compliant over the bumps. So right now I have it in sport mode, so that I think firms the suspension a little bit and definitely helps with the gearbox. So again, this particular car, the earlier cars, 2005, they had the Duo Select, which was basically the Ferrari F1 transmission. Not a really good match for you know, a luxury sports sedan. It was very jerky and pretty expensive to maintain between clutches and pumps and things like that. So mid 2007. They changed to a traditional ZF sourced transmission, 6-speed automatic, and much better than the Duo Select. So similar to the 360, torque down low, not really great, but definitely really starts to pull around 3,500, 4,000 RPMs or so. Steering wheel feels pretty good. Kind of a mixture between, again, this particular car is more the Executive GT than Edition, which kind of gave you the wood look, wood steering wheel, and some, you know, massaging seats, and, you know, heated and ventilated, which is nice. So again, more on the luxury kind of slant to this car. Pretty quiet in here. Kind of cool. It does have double pane glass side windows, which is pretty nice, which I'm sure adds to the weight of the car as well, because actually this car is a fair amount heavier than the Panamera, which dimensionally they're pretty close. I think you know, they're within an inch or two of one another, but this car weighs 200 or 300 pounds more. I think it's pretty close to 4,300 pounds, yet it does not have all-wheel drive. So all-wheel drive obviously adds weight to the car, which the Panamera has. So you know, definitely a bit of a weight difference. Feel a little bit of a shudder through the steering wheel on certain bumps, which you would not expect to feel, you know, on a car that cost almost 120 grand new. Accelerate a little bit here. Sounds great. Got up to about 7,000 RPM and really started to pull 5,000, 6,000 RPM. So again, similar to the Ferrari, the 360, really getting in the upper revs to really make it move. But it goes pretty good. It sounds great. The only thing I would, if this were my car, I would probably do something to the exhaust to make it a little bit louder. It sounds really good. I just would want a little bit more volume, so maybe it's an X-pipe or something like that to give it a little bit more volume to it. So it does sound good. It sounds really good on the outside. You just don't hear it so much on the inside, which is, you know, all important when you're driving. So obviously these cars would likely be daily drivers as well. So there's a couple of decent sized cup holders here, though not real big ones, so that you can kind of take a good sized heated, cooled tumbler. I don't know if they're fitting in there very well. So I don't know if you hear that. You probably don't, but I hear some little bit of rattles and squeaks here and there. Again, this car has 26,375 miles right now, and again, I can kind of hear some rattles and squeaks that I would not expect on a, again, near $120,000 car that only has 26,000 miles on it.
Alright, so we're test driving the Panamera. Sean mentioned this is the V6 model, so this is 300 horsepower. I haven't driven one of these before. To Sean's point, I mean, this is all Porsche in here. There's no doubt about it. Again, in comparison, very good driving position. Everything feels really close and tight here. Right, this car comes in a little lighter than the Maserati. These were just around 4,000 pounds. Gotta admit, when I used to think of the two cars not side by side, I wouldn't have put the Maserati being bigger, kind of in all the dimensions, and also being that much heavier. Good acceleration. You know, didn't feel a ton of torque there in the low RPMs, but nice smooth shifting. This is my first time in a PDK as well too. So this is a 7-speed PDK. Very big difference between this and the Maserati as far as the shifting so far. I know that was my first pass through the gears, but that felt a lot different. Really precise handling, super smooth ride too. We're on some back roads here, and you know there's some bumps, but this is really going through them really nicely. Classic Porsche steering wheel. This is great positioning for steering. You really feel tight in this cabin. Comfortable driving position. And this also has a couple of different modes here. We were in Sport. I'm going to switch over to Sport Plus. Noticeable difference. Does feel a little tighter. Steering, the handling, the connection all together, even just from the accelerator to the transmission, and really the car super responsive to your acceleration here. Got a couple of bumps here, and right over them. Really comfortable ride there. Talked about it earlier. Big difference in the mileage on these cars, but honestly, I think you'd almost think it's in reverse. You'd think that the Maserati had 5 times the miles. This is unbelievably tight. It's almost inconceivable with this many miles. This car still feels this tight. Looks are deceiving here because this is not, it doesn't feel like I'm driving this stretched out Porsche. It is all Porsche as far as this driving experience as well too. Wow, that transmission, that is just silky smooth shifting. Got a red light here, so let's count these brakes. Oh yeah, strong braking, strong brakes. And I know Sean mentioned as well, and I've read similar things as well too from some of the test drives, that the V6, not as much of a difference in the driving experience as people might think. And I'm, only driving this one, I'd be surprised if there was that significant a difference. For me, it's got a very much more precise driving experience altogether when everything's connected so well. And I think in comparison, the Maserati, individual items, when you think about the acceleration, when you think about the steering, you think about the braking, individually, I'm in favor of all of those inputs. Bring them all together, and they just don't feel as connected as you're getting in this driving experience whatsoever. I'm really surprised at how tight this car feels and drives still. Again, when we talked about the difference in the mileage, I just can't believe that this car feels this tight with the mileage it has in comparison. Going over the bumps, everything is still tight. No real rattle. Everything is just as you'd think it was when it rolled off the assembly line.
Okay, so here we are in a Panamera. So it definitely feels, after hopping out of the Quattroporte, it definitely feels more compliant, definitely more buttoned down, I would say. They have the dampening down right. So I have it in sport mode here. So this particular car has the sport chrono package, which gives you the adjustments of Sport and Sport Plus, which also then affects the suspension, or the PASM, which is Porsche's adjustable suspension. This is actually in the stiffer of the two modes for the suspension. But pulls smooth. So this is the base 6-cylinder. It's a 3.6, right at 300 horsepower. I think it's 295 foot-pounds of torque. So I would call it adequate. It actually, as we kind of drive, and I put some miles on this car, so I'm pretty familiar with it. It's actually, I would say, surprisingly more powerful than you would think. So I've driven this. I've driven the S, which is the 400 horse 8-cylinder, and that car certainly does have more power to it. There's no doubt about it, and it definitely sounds a lot better. But it's not like a night and day difference as you would think it is. Just kind of going through the curves here. The steering is very direct. It's a little light for my tastes, but definitely direct. Feels like Porsche steering. Again, going through the turns, just well buttoned down. It's just the best way that I can kind of describe it. So PDK transmission. So this is the 7-speed Porsche PDK. So the dual clutch, automatic transmission, seamless. Really does have seamless gear shifts. I've driven lots of other PDKs and similar dual clutch systems like Volkswagen's DSG, and they're really, really good. Definitely seamless. One thing, this one has kind of the standard steering wheel from the push buttons. So it doesn't have the paddles. It has these push buttons that Porsche designers had originally done with the PDK, and actually it started with they had a little something different with the Tiptronics, but where they were push and pull, and it just didn't make a lot of sense when everyone else in the industry was going
downshift left and upshift right. So this has that kind of steering wheel, and it's honestly, I never really use these at all. But so when you're in sport mode, it tightens up the shifts. It makes them a little bit shorter, but also then holds on to the revs longer. And then when you go into Sport Plus, it really holds on to the gears a lot longer. Honestly, really doesn't make much sense at all from street driving perspective. So normally I would just kind of leave it in sport, which is kind of a happy medium between the two, and have the PASM on the stiffer of the two, which is on right now. And again, really compliant over some of the imperfections that we feel here. The other thing I notice is really kind of a lack of any kind of really any kind of rattles or squeaks or anything like that. You know, as I was driving through the Quattroporte, I mean, that car has 26,000 miles on it, and it has rattles, and this car feels rock solid. It feels absolutely rock solid, and it has 124,500 and change on it. It definitely does not feel like that whatsoever. So seats in this car, again, they're really comfortable. Pretty good from the bolsters perspective, kind of keep you snug but not being overbearing. Again, they kind of feel like they would, you know, you can kind of pluck them out of a Cayman or a 911 and pretty much feels the same. One thing I'll notice too is it just feels like a more contemporary car relative to the Quattroporte. From a technology standpoint, you know, touchscreen. You can change some of the instrumentation here in the instrument panel right in front of you. It just feels like a more contemporary car. I'd wrap this up by saying it just feels like a Porsche. It feels like you're driving a Porsche. The steering is Porsche, the braking's Porsche, just how it handles and handles kind of the undulations, and the dampening's just set up just right. It feels like a Porsche that can carry 4 people.
All right, so here we go. We just finished everything up. We just finished up the test drives, and now it's time to kind of go to the scoreboard.
Yeah.
So let's start with the exterior, Chris. So
Exterior, I mean, for me, that one was probably the easiest of all choices. For me, hands down, it was the Maserati.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've always loved it. I love it. This one, the way it's put together, the color. I mean, clouds cover now, so I think we're getting a little more of that really cool blue coming out of this color right now too. And I just love this car. I love this car.
yeah, I agree, and I'm exterior on this car as well. I really like the looks of it. You know, it just works. And it looks very unique compared to everything. I mean, that car is definitely unique looking as well. But I think this is unique in a better way, right? It's just a very sexy car.
It is.
It really is.
I mean, even make it sound sexy. Quattroporte.
Yeah.
It just means 4-door.
Yeah,
I mean, it's still, but it just sounds great, you know.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that. So definitely exterior on the Maserati. So interior, what do you think?
Interior, I mean, you know, there's an age difference, but I still that was easier than some of these have been in the past. Interior altogether, I'd go with the Panamera.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it feels like you're in any other Porsche.
Mm-hmm.
The steering wheel on it is great. Just the quality, the seats are really good. Again, feels like you're in any other Porsche. This to me feels just not as well put together.
Yep.
So I definitely got to go with the Porsche.
Yeah, I like the piping. Like some things about it.
Agreed.
It's a neat combination.
Yeah.
But just altogether, this is just. I like things. It's just tightly fit together. Everything matches. It's just, it's all Porsche. Steering wheel. I think it's pretty easy decision on that too.
All right, performance.
So I mean, the test drive was interesting. Again, never having driven one of these before. Pure performance. the sound, that exhaust note, that is a thing of beauty.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, this car is given, I mean, the Porsche is given up 100 horsepower, right? So it's 400, 300. The sound on it, like you said, is night and day difference. Though this car is a few hundred pounds heavier.
It is.
Than this, even though this has all-wheel drive.
I know.
Right? So, performance-wise, like just acceleration.
Yeah, that's
right. You know, this car is probably 0 to 60 mid-5s. This is about 6. Not a night and day difference, but this car, when you get up in the upper revs, it really starts going, and it sounds great. But when I think of performance, it's more than just straight line, right?
No
so,
doubt.
For me, I have to give it to the Panamera because of just the steering feel, the way it handles the bumps. I mean, it's very compliant. It's well dampened. This one, it feels, and I think I probably noted this in the test drive. It just feels floaty to me. It's just kind of like, you know.
I didn't get so much of the body roll, especially for the weight of the car.
And that
roll,
I did get.
The body roll,
the pitch.
I thought I'd get more.
Yeah.
That's what maybe I went into it with the thought that I'd get more body roll. But I agree. I mean, when we started and I said performance, Ferrari V8, that's the only part of it.
Yeah.
The whole driving experience was clearly.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, this is so tight. The only thing that's tight about this is the exterior. Everything else feels like it's all pieced together. Nothing's really connected all the way through that driving experience. You take each component, and there's fantastic parts to it.
Yeah.
You put it all together, and there's something. Yeah, there's something missing. Here, it's the exact opposite. Everything is so well connected. I mean, I absolutely love this driving experience. I still can't believe the mileage on this car and how tight it is. You talked about going over the bumps. I think I aimed for a bump just to go through it to see how it was going to ride. It was super smooth, right over it. No rattles, no nothing.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's so well put together.
Yeah, I would agree. So, all right. So, which one talks to you more? That one. Yeah. I mean, again, other than the sound.
Yep, exactly.
And
sound is awesome.
Yeah.
You know,
other than that,
the sound lacks a little bit in here too.
Oh, it totally does.
That's
does.
You know, from a Porsche perspective, you still want a little more.
Yeah,
take care of that aftermarket.
But that one just talks to me more. Just the overall driving experience just feels. It feels like you're driving a Porsche.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
You know,
it never felt as big as in my mind I thought it was going to feel. There's no doubt.
All right, so sum it up. Which one would you rather have?
So, it's a pretty easy one. You know, I absolutely love the look of this car. I keep looking at it. But hands down, Porsche.
Yeah. I am 100% agreement. Love the look, love the sound. It's just everything else just kind of little demerits.
Yep.
And this car just everything just is integrated well together. You know, I put a lot of miles driving this car, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
You know, and so again, for a car that's less than 20 grand, the reason why it's less than 20 grand is because of the mileage, but it doesn't feel like it.
No,
right?
Exactly.
But I mean, you're talking about less than $20,000, and you get that car, and it feels like it has a third of that mileage, a quarter of that mileage. I don't even know. But
I would totally agree.
So for me, absolutely, I'd rather the Panamera.
All right, so Panamera it is. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, if you like these videos, we'd love to put more out there, so hit the subscribe button.
And check out our site, dreamcarexchange.com. Thanks a lot, and enjoy the drive.